Most movies follow a pretty conventional narrative formula because, unless a filmmaker really knows what they're doing, deviating from the typicality of hero defeats villain can end up backfiring spectacularly. Yet, every so often, they might do something a little different and find a way for both the hero and villain of their story to end up coming out on top. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and here are 10 movies where the good guy and bad guy both win. Number 10. The Silence of the Lambs, Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter. The Silence of the Lambs is a bit of a tricky one, but it still counts. First and foremost, FBI trainee Clarice Starling, Jodie Foster, tracks down and kills serial killer Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine, while ensuring that the captive Catherine Martin, Brooke Smith, is rescued from his clutches and no longer has to keep putting that darn lotion in the basket. Though Bill might be the major force Clarice has to go up against throughout Jonathan Demme's masterpiece, they're hardly the overarching villain. That is, of course, Hannibal Lecter, played by the inimitable Anthony Hopkins, who brutally flees incarceration and disappears to parts unknown, only to resurface at the end of the film to make a teasingly playful / ominous phone call to Clarice from the Bahamas, ending on one of the best final shots in movie history shortly afterwards. Because escaping imprisonment apparently isn't enough of a dub for Lecter, it's then also implied that he's about to kill and devour his prior jailer and all-time movie smart guy Dr. Frederick Chilton, played by Anthony Held, ensuring he gets to enjoy revenge as a dish served, well, however the hell he likes. You can argue that Lecter escaping taints Clarice's victory somewhat, but let's be honest, her operating goal was to take down Buffalo Bill, and that she most certainly accomplished. Number 9. Point Break, Johnny Utah and Bodhi. Kathryn Bigelow's Point Break is an absurdly entertaining action flick capped by a terrific ending that nimbly pulls off the tricky task of giving a win of sorts to both its protagonist and antagonist. Firstly, Keanu Reeves' rookie FBI agent Johnny Utah, still the best name ever made, plays his part in bringing down Patrick Swayze's Bodhi and his gang of bank-robbing surfers. His love interest Tyler, Laurie Petty, makes it out in one piece, and he even manages to track Bodhi to Australia, where he decides he's better off no longer being a cop. It's real human growth right there. As for Bodhi, well, while he's caught by Utah, Utah ultimately uncuffs him and allows him to surf into the 50-year storm, a record-breaking storm that will almost certainly kill him. Though that might sound like a bleak ending and an absolute loss for Bodhi, he makes it clear earlier in the film that he's entirely at peace with perishing in the storm. He flat out tells Utah, if you want the ultimate, you gotta be willing to pay the ultimate price. It's not tragic to die doing what you love. With that in mind, Bodhi's final surf was basically his own version of riding off into the sunset. God, so metal. Number 8. Wayne's World, Wayne, Garth, and Benjamin. A comedic example now for sure, but a no less fitting one. The obvious heroes of Wayne's World are Wayne, Mike Myers, and Garth, Dana Carvey, while the primary villain is sleazeball TV producer Benjamin Cain, who plots to turn Wayne and Garth's show into a nightmarish shadow of its former self and seduce Wayne's girlfriend Cassandra in the process. Though the film's first ending sees Wayne's life fall apart while Garth dies and Cassandra flees with Benjamin, the duo ultimately opts to redo the ending in mega happy fashion. In this conclusion, Cassandra signs a record deal with her band and rekindles her romance with Wayne. Garth starts dating his own dream woman, and Benjamin learns that his insane handsomeness and wealth won't bring him happiness. Hell, even Benjamin's lackey Russell, Kurt Fuller, learns that platonic love can exist between two grown men, because why the hell not? Wayne sums it up perfectly with the film's final line. Isn't it great that we're all better people? Rather than give Benjamin the gratifying comeuppance most were surely expecting, they went with the surprise redemption route. Number 7. The Menu, Margot and Slowick. It's admittedly easy for both the hero and villain to come away victorious when the villain's plan involves suicide, but The Menu is an interesting example nonetheless. Villain Chef Slowik, played by Ray Fiennes, has a scheme that involves inviting a series of quote-unquote guests to his exclusive restaurant on a remote island, where he plots to kill every single one of them for contributing to his lost passion for cooking. And indeed, by the time the end credits roll around, everyone on Slowik's guest list is dead before he burns the restaurant down, killing himself and his staff. Truly mission accomplished, and not in a fake George Bush way either. There is one exception, however, and that's our hero Margot, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who was not an intended guest, but invited along last minute by the ever-detestable Tyler, played by Nicholas Hoult. And so, Margot quite ingeniously manages to talk her way out of being killed by Slowik by asking him to make an unpretentious simple cheeseburger, in turn reminding him of his more joyful youth as a line cook. By asking to take the burger to go, Slowik grants her passage out of the restaurant before he burns it down, allowing hero and villain alike to get exactly what they wanted. Number 6. Swordfish, Stanley and Gabriel. Swordfish's embattled hero is Stanley Jobson, played by Hugh Jackman, a hacker who soon enough realizes that getting in league with a rogue government agent called Gabriel Shear, a peak early 2000s John Travolta, probably wasn't the smartest call. Stanley is eventually roped into taking part in a bank heist in order to save his daughter Holly, who has been kidnapped by Shear. In the climax, he not only manages to get Holly to safety, but the FBI even arranges for him to receive full custody of her, in favor of his ex-wife Melissa. As for Gabriel, while it momentarily seems like he's been killed in the finale, the ending reveals that he actually faked his own death, escaped with all the money, and is using it to fund his own ongoing crusade against terrorists worldwide. Oh, and Ginger, Halle Berry's character, the undercover DEA agent he apparently killed a little while earlier, yeah, she lied to Stanley about being with the DEA, and was in fact with cahoots with Gabriel the whole damn time. Filthy rich and cruising the world with Halle Berry doing your dream job? How much of a win could this guy possibly get? Number 5. The Batman, Bruce Wayne and the Riddler. The Batman allows its villain to win the battle, while the titular hero gets the moral victory. On one hand, the Riddler, Paul Dano, successfully turns Gotham City into a flooded hellscape by blowing up the sea wall, and by assassinating crime boss Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro, he creates a dangerous power vacuum in the city. He also accomplishes his task of revealing abject corruption in Gotham's underbelly, and even makes friends with the Joker. All in all, not bad going. But on the other hand, Batman, Robert Pattinson, prevents the Riddler and his chud goons from assassinating the mayor, and his entire experience battling the Riddler has made him realize that his violent vigilantism isn't actually helping the city that much. Batman needs to be a symbol of hope more than just a symbol of vengeance, a theme woven into my personal favorite Batman comic ever, Darwyn Cooke's Batman Ego, that I personally was made up to see replicated on screen by director Matt Reeves. Rather than flee Gotham like Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, Batman sticks around and becomes a source of hope and comfort for those harmed by the city's flooding, ensuring that we'll be looking at a very different Dark Knight in the upcoming sequel. In a time where superhero burnout and fatigue is real, can we also take a moment to appreciate just how special the Batman was, that the idea of further adventures in this world is genuinely exciting. Also, while I'm here, obligatory question time. Who do you want to see our bats face off against in the sequel? And what do you want the sequel to be called? Spitball your best title and villain combos down in the comments below. Number 4. 3:10 to Yuma, Dan Evans and Ben Wade. James Mangold's Western remake 3:10 to Yuma centers around impoverished rancher Dan Evans, played by Christian Bale, who takes a job escorting ruthless outlaw Ben Wade, played by a brilliant Russell Crowe, to the 310 train to Yuma Territorial Prison, where he will be hanged for his many crimes. As the situation becomes more dire though, Evans manages to negotiate a much better deal for himself from the railroad. Enough money to pay off his substantial mortgage debt, access to river water on his farm, and relief from his creditor Hollander. Though Evans is killed in the climax of Mangold's remake by Wade's savage second-in-command Charlie Prince, played by the always terrifying Ben Foster, he did nevertheless get Wade to the train, ensuring that his family will be well cared for following his death. As for Wade, it's made incredibly clear that he willingly boarded the train to ensure that Evans completed his task and will receive what he's owed, but only because Wade knows full well that he'll manage to escape his incarceration on board the train long before it ever reaches Yuma. Now that's what you call a win-win. Number 3. No Time to Die, James Bond and Safin. No Time to Die sure is an interesting one. On one hand, Daniel Craig's James Bond accomplishes the seemingly insurmountable task of dismantling Spectre once and for all, albeit somewhat inadvertently and entirely murderously courtesy of the villain known as Safin, played by Rami Malek. 007 also kills Safin and destroys his nanobot factory, preventing the technology from being used in the wider world. And in a bittersweet final twist, he also lays down his own life after being infected with the nanobots, allowing himself to be obliterated along with the factory to ensure that Madeline and his daughter Mathilde can't be infected by him. It's a tragic victory given that it ends with Bond's death, but he saves many, many lives, including those closest to him, and is immortalized as a hero. On the balance of things, that's a pretty good win. As for Safin, he gets one huge win that nobody else in the Bond canon ever has before. He successfully killed James freaking Bond. Number 2. Inglourious Basterds, Aldo Raine and Hans Landa. Quentin Tarantino's brilliant Inglourious Basterds is a fantastic example of this. On one hand, the bastards succeed in executing Operation Kino and killing not only Adolf Hitler, but most of the German high command. Sure, many of the bastards die along with Shosanna, played by the brilliant Melanie Laurent, in the process, but that was always part of the plan. All the same, the mission is accomplished, and both Aldo Raine, Brad Pitt, and his fellow bastard Yudovich, BJ Novak, seemingly live to see the end of the war. The movie's major villain, SS Colonel Hans Landa, an Oscar-winning Christoph Waltz, is meanwhile spared the brutal murder afforded to the High Command, and in fact survives the events of the film entirely. Landa, ever the opportunistic sociopath, allows the bastards to complete Operation Kino in exchange for securing himself a full pardon and other benefits. The only fly in the ointment? Raine carves a swastika into his forehead to ensure he'll always be recognized as the Nazi arsehole he is. Even with that reminder in mind, it's still a majorly favorable outcome for Landa, especially as Tarantino revealed in a 2019 interview on the Happy Sad Confused podcast that the history books remembered him as a hero, and after the war, he settled on Nantucket Island, where he became an amateur detective. And number 1, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, Taylor Gentry and Leslie Vernon. Horror mockumentary Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon revolves around a journalist called Taylor Gentry, played by Angela Goethals, and her film crew as they chronicle the exploits of Leslie Vernon, played by Nathan Basil, an aspiring serial killer. It's not exactly a surprise that Leslie's murderous exploits are eventually turned inward on the film crew themselves, leaving Taylor as the final girl who uses her wiles to defeat and apparently kill Leslie in the film's ending. As for how this is in any way a win for Leslie, well, he planned the whole thing out. Leslie always intended for Taylor to be the final girl, and basically gave her all the tools to defeat him and ensure his passage into the annals of serial killer legend. And beyond that, though Taylor crushes Leslie's hand in an apple press and leaves his corpse to burn, a credits scene reveals that he inexplicably survived to fight another day. Because let's face it, no true slasher icon goes down for the count after a single movie, right?